G'day, it's Oscar, and we're up to Listening Challenge 007. My favourite James Bond is Sean Connery. I think it's got as much to do with my love of the Scottish accent and the love of my dearly departed friend, Ewan Hunt, who is also from Scotland as well. Today's question about listening in the workplace comes from Bruce. Bruce was a participant in a workshop I ran recently, and he said afterwards, he sent me an email. He says, Oscar, you say listening happens before, during, and after the conversation. Well, when you said it during the workshop, I noticed everybody's head was nodding, but I'll be honest with you, Oscar, I have no idea what you meant. How can you possibly listen before a conversation takes place? Thanks, Bruce. Great question. And it shows a wonderful example of the 125-900 rule, which we'll talk about shortly. When I say listening happens before, during, and after the conversation, what I'm saying is, how do you set up the meeting for success? How do you set up the conversation for success? How do you warm it up? How do you build up the rapport so we're not coming into the conversation cold? And this is more powerful, but not exclusively, for regular meetings and regular meeting context. Maybe it's a work in progress meeting, a campaign catch up, a project update meeting. I would recommend that the simplest thing you can do to listen before the conversation takes place is send them a message. The message could be a text, the message could be an email, the message could be a chat via Slack, or it could be just a really quick phone call. Here's a couple of questions you can ask, Bruce. What would make this a great conversation for you? What would you like to focus on during our time together? What will make the biggest difference by the end of the meeting? This is an act of curiosity and generosity on your part, and it's signaling to the other person that you're genuinely interested to make it a great conversation. Now, as powerful as it is for them, in about half the cases, this is what my clients tell me, the person you'll ask has the consciousness in that moment to ask you exactly the same question. And they might come back to you and go, well, this is what I'd like to get out of it. What would you like to get out of it? You've had the conversation before the conversation. The more we can communicate about how we want to communicate rather than what we're communicating about makes listening so much more powerful. Now, Bruce, remember the 125-900 rule I spoke to you about? We speak at 125 minutes, yet we think at 900 words per minute. This differential in the speed at which we think and the speed at which we speak means we're thinking 9 times faster. Now, if you can plant that seed in their subconscious before the meeting takes place, guess what their subconscious will do on their behalf, but also on your behalf. It'll get them rehearsing what they want from the meeting. It means the likelihood that what they say will not necessarily be rehearsed, but it will be more considered. Therefore, you'll start to compress time because they'll be clearer on their outcome, not just how they want to communicate it, but what they want to say as well. You can also pose that question right at the beginning of the meeting. You mentioned, Bruce, that a great meeting would be X. Is it still the case, or has anything changed? Again, it's a signal of that you've heard what they said last time and you want to make sure we stay on track. Now, for many of us, we have lots of really powerful tips that we can share within this community. So what I'm curious about is, what are your big tips for listening before the meeting? How do you listen to others, whether it's in paired conversation or in groups? How do you listen before the meeting to make the meeting experience a great use of everybody's time rather than just a regular update? If you've got any questions about listening in the workplace as well, pop it in the comments below. And whether it's Bruce or Muriel, we'll be sure to continue to answer these questions. I'm Oscar Trimboli, and along with the Deep Listening Ambassadors, we're on a quest to create 100 million deep listeners in the world. You've given us the greatest gift of all. You've listened to us. Thanks for listening.